Hi, my name is Katie Vadros, and today we're going to talk about composting overview. What is composting? Composting is an alternative solid waste management system, or SMW. It can be used for the recycling of organic matters into useful products. It can also be used to control the increase of waste. Composting or sustainability is something new that has came out in the dietetic world within the last couple years. When I was an undergrad, we really didn't talk about sustainability or composting. So this is pretty new, something that dietitians are getting into to try to help and save the environment. Things that can be composted, anything like yard waste, food waste scraps, those can be composted. Composting these wastes creates a product that can be used to help improve soils, grow the next generation of crops, and improve water quality. I think this is very important for dietitians. Since we're in the food and nutrition industry, we can be there to help farmers and agriculture and make sure that we improve the soils that are growing our foods. We can help the next generation of our crops and help with the water quality for everybody in the world. Compost is created by combining organic wastes such as wasted food, yard trimmings, and manures in the right ratios into piles, rolls, or vessels. Adding bulking agents such as wood chips as necessary to accelerate the breakdown of organic materials, and then allowing the finished material to fully stabilize and mature through a curing process. This is how you create some type of compost. Factors that affect the composting process. You need moisture, temperature, proper aeration, and carbon and nitrogen ratio. If all of these things like moisture, temperature, your carbon and nitrogen ratio, if all of these things, you don't have them at the right settings, then it's going to affect your compost in a negative way. So the first thing we're going to talk about is moisture. The moisture content for your waste should be between 50 and 55%. A moisture content above 75% is not beneficial for compost pile, as it decreases the temperature of the pile by cooling it and decrease the production of microbial activity and biomass. So if you're going to compost, you need to make sure that your moisture of your waste product is between 50 and 55%. If you have too high of a moisture content, it is not beneficial for your compost pile. Next, we're going to talk about temperature. The start of decomposition takes place in thermophilic environment. The exothermic biological activities of aerobic bacteria. Temperature rises to 65 to 70 degrees Celsius within a couple days. So when you're composting, you also need to make sure that you're watching your temperature, that it stays between a certain range. So that way it can start decomposing. And it has to live in a certain environment to be able to do that. Proper aeration. Regular turning of the heaps will provide adequate aeration. Pretty much when you have your big piles, you got to keep turning them because you need that oxygen to reach those under the heaps in the piles, you have to have proper oxygen for composting. It's a must. Carbon and nitrogen ratio. The carbon and nitrogen ratio should be maintained below 50 for speedy composting. If it is high, the decomposition process will be slow. If it is very high, nitrogenous material like cow dung or cow manure may have to be added to bring down the carbon and nitrogen ratio to the desired level. So if you don't have that carbon to nitrogen ratio that you need, you might need some cow manure to be added to bring down the carbon nitrogen ratio to the desired level. You need to find that happy medium with carbon and nitrogen. What happens if you don't compost waste? Most of organic solid waste is still disposed of unsuitable in conventional ways, unsustainable in conventional ways, such as they're putting it in a landfill and incineration, which result in the emission of greenhouse gases that contain heavy metals, toxic gases such as sulfur dioxide, dust, heavy metal fumes, and incombustible hydrocarbons, and losses of valuable nutrients. So we know in the United States and the rest of the world, we keep throwing our garbage and all our waste in the landfills, and there's only so much garbage that the world can take, or so many landfills that we can continue to throw our garbage in. So if we try to reuse our waste and compost it and, try to make the earth a better place for us to live and not keep putting our waste in landfills and, start composting, then we don't have to worry about what's going to happen when landfills get too much. In 2015, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, recorded the production of 262 million tons of solid waste by American citizens. So this 262 million tons of solid waste is just in America. 91 million tons, which is about 35%, was reused. Since this is something, now for dietitians, I feel like this is something new, but for the rest of the world, for farmers, composting's kind of like always been a thing, but I think that we can definitely get that 35% up. Hopefully within the next couple years, more people will start composting, and maybe that 35%, maybe we can get it at 50%, where half of the world is starting to compost and reuse our solid waste. Paper and paperboard is almost 50% of our waste. Woods 2.9%, yard trimmings 23.3%, plastics 3.4%, metals 9.1%, rubber 4.3%, glass 3.3%, and miscellaneous waste is 2%. So majority of the stuff that we're wasting is paper and paperboard. So we need to make sure that we're composting that paper and recycling it. Vermicomposting. Vermicomposting is a product of earthworm digestion and aerobic decomposition using activities of micro and macroorganisms. Vermicomposting or worm composting results in rich organic soil amendment containing A diversity of plant nutrients and beneficial microorganisms. Aerobic versus anaerobic composting. Aerobic is a hot compost. You can use a 3-base system. It is fueled by oxygen and moisture. If you have an aerobic compost, you have to turn it weekly. It'd be a large compost pile. It's pretty quick. It's ready in 6 weeks, and it kills pathogens and weeds. Where anaerobic is a cool compost, you can use a Black Council bin. It is fueled by bacteria and moisture. Anaerobic compost is not turned like your aerobic compost is. It's a small compost. The composting is a little slower. It's ready in 6 months, to where aerobic is a lot quicker. It's ready in 6 weeks. And anaerobic composting can spread pathogens and weeds. So, as dietitians, we can take certain action steps to better suit our environment and to help our community better our environment. First, I feel like as dietitians, we need to learn what composting is. Some dietitians, some newer dietitians that are starting to learn what composting is and sustainability might be learning this in school right now. I know our students are starting early, learning what sustainability is and what composting is. So if you're an older dietitian like I am and you didn't learn any of that in school, then it's important to learn what composting is. What are their objectives? What is the reasoning for composting? Once you learn what composting is, I think that we as dietitians need to teach each other how to compost. We can learn from each other. We can teach each other, just try to get all on the same page and try to help each other to set those goals. We also can educate the community on composting and teach them why it's important, how it helps the environment, what are the benefits. That's what the community wants to know. If they're gonna take these steps into helping the environment, why do they need to help the environment? What are the benefits of the environment? Is this going to help their children or their grandchildren in the future if we start this now? Something that we can do as dietitians, we can also offer classes and our services to help the community compost. We have the knowledge and the background, the education to be able to research and to learn what composting is, where some people in the community might not have that education or the background to research to see what type of environment they need to be in to compost, or what they need for the soil, or what I'm saying. So we can be there to offer classes, and offer our services, since we know what we need to do. We know how to research. We can help them in those ways. And these next 2 slides are my references. And I hope you learned about composting. And I hope that us as dietitians can come together and teach one another and educate our community about what composting is and how we can help and save our environment for the future of our kids and our future grandkids. Thank you.